bit of some technical issue, I guess. So we request that we all exercise patience as he's going to join us any moment from now. Thank you.
He's around, Dr. Lupa.
Okay. Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Dr. Mujtaba. So as I said earlier on, you are all welcome to the week 5, day 1. And today we are going to be discussing on the development and validation of a questionnaire. And to do justice to that is no other person but Associate Professor Abibullah Adamu of the Department of Community Medicine. Alfa Mohammed of the Radiology Department is my name from here, from the Usman Danfodio University Teaching Hospital here in Sokoto. Before we commence the lecture proper, I would like to invite Dr. Cynthia, who is a member of the UDUTH Research and Education Committee, to read out the citation of our presenter. Dr. Cynthia, please. Are you online?
Yes, I'm online. Good evening, sir. Good evening, all. Yes, sir. So I'll be reading the citation for our presenter today, Associate Professor Habibullah Adamu. Professor Habibullah Adamu was born on 18th September in Ngaski Town, Kebbi State, Nigeria. He began his early education at the University Primary School, Sokoto, where he obtained his primary school leaving certificate. He thereafter proceeded to Federal Government College, Minna, where he successfully completed his secondary school certificate examination. Professor Adamu obtained the Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery degree from Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto. In addition to his medical qualifications, he holds a professional diploma in computer studies, a national diploma in civil law, and a master's of public health degree. He is also a fellow of the West African College of Physicians, reflecting his distinguished professional standing in the medical field. He's currently an associate professor of community medicine at Usmanu Danfodio University, Sokoto, where he has made significant contributions in teaching, research, and academic leadership. Over the years, he has served the university in various academic and administrative capacities, including as a member of the University Internal Quality Assurance Committee, as the head of the Education Unit's One Health Institution, as a faculty examination officer, as a college examination officer, as the head of the Family Health Unit, as the member of the Research Ethics Committee for the Life Sciences, as the acting head of the Basic Health Care Provision Fund, Rural/Urban Posting Coordinator, and also as the coordinator of the Allied Health Science Program, among several others. Professor Adamu has a rich consultancy experience with both local and international organizations, contributing his expertise to projects in healthcare, education, and public health development. He has an impressive record of over 40 publications in reputable local and international journals, reflecting his commitment to advancing knowledge and health in medicine and public health. Beyond his professional career, Professor Adamu is known for his dedication to mentorship and service to the community. He's happily married with children. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to warmly welcome Professor Adamu. We are glad to have you in our midst today. Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
Good evening. Sorry, I'm trying to, okay. Sorry, good evening all. Please, am I audible? Can you hear me?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, so thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure to be here to share with you a few things about a few things on development and validation of questionnaire. It's actually a very important topic. The organizers of this workshop series actually have been doing a great deal of work in ensuring that this workshop series continue to take place. I think since they started it a couple of weeks ago, probably it was only a week or so that the program did not hold. Yesterday we were supposed to have it, but unfortunately we had another activity that was going to clash. So that's why it had to be pushed to Sunday. So please, all inconveniences are regretted. Without wasting further time, I will go straight into the topic of the day, which is development and validation of questionnaire. Please, is the slide moving? Are you seeing the slide?
Yes, it just took off now, but it wasn't initially on slide share. Okay, it's coming up now.
It's coming up, cool.
Yes, it's on slide share and it's visible.
All right, is it moving?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So survey-based studies are abundant in medical, social science, psychological, and behavioral research. In fact, in several other researches. And these studies involve the use of questionnaire. And as we know, questionnaire is a document that contains list of questions that help the researcher to gather information from respondents, information that are there to answer certain specific objectives of the study. So the use of a well-designed questionnaire is therefore crucial in determining the quality of scientific researches. It is therefore important for us to learn the nitty-gritty of how questionnaire is designed. So designing questionnaire requires proper planning to ensure that relevant questions and items are considered in a way that will reflect the specific objectives of the study. So as we are going to see later, we'll see that questionnaire can be either structured or unstructured, but the preferred one is the structured questionnaire because it will allow you to streamline your questions in line with your specific objectives. So once the questionnaire has been designed, a crucial step also is to perform questionnaire validation because it is very important to ensure the quality of responses and results. So a rigorous systematic approach must be followed to design, develop, and validate questionnaire. This presentation therefore outlines the key steps in developing a questionnaire and also some steps that are followed in order to validate the questionnaire so that one can have a reliable data. So let's briefly look at the types of questionnaire. Questionnaire, there is no single way of classifying questionnaire. So questionnaires can be classified based on their mode of administration into either self-administered questionnaires or interviewer-administered questionnaire or even online questionnaires. So self-administered questionnaires are those questionnaires that are completed by the respondents themselves. So there are questionnaires that are designed with the hindsight of knowing that the respondent can read the questionnaire by himself and also understand the questions and then respond appropriately. So there are a lot of them, so they can be administered either paper-based, where you give someone the questionnaire to either tick or circle or write, or you send it online. So it has several advantages, among which it's inexpensive because you can, and is very fast. You can administer 50 questionnaires to 50 respondents at the same time. Within 10 minutes, you get your questionnaires back and you move on. And one of the disadvantages or the limitation is that it depends on one's literacy. So if the respondents are not literate enough, you cannot use this type of questionnaire. You have to use other methods. And there is risk of missing data. It is associated with low response rates because people don't like responding to questionnaires. So when you give them, if you are there, some will just fill the first page and return it to you. Some will even collect it and say, go and come back later. By the time you return to collect it, you will not even see them. So some of the questionnaires will eventually disappear. So sometimes it leads to inefficiency. The other one is the self-administered, is the interviewer-administered questionnaire. This one involves face-to-face administration of the questionnaire, but it can also be administered to him or her via telephone, either online, via telephone, or you meet the person face to face, you ask, and then his responses, you tick it, or you write, or you cycle, as the case may be. So the advantage here is that it allows you to clarify doubt the opportunity to review what you are either discussing with the respondent also. So that is one of the advantages. But the limitation here is that sometimes it's associated with interviewer bias. The interviewer, there is tendency for the interviewer to ask more detailed questions to certain group of respondents than some respondents, especially if the interviewer has idea that a particular respondent has more information than some respondents. So, and it's also time consuming because while self-administered questionnaire, you can distribute 100 questionnaires within 10-15 minutes, people fill and return. This one, you have to be doing it one by one. So in most cases, you have to recruit research assistants that will help you administer the questionnaire. So it's also a bit capital intensive because of this. There is also web-based electronic questionnaires, which can be delivered through emails, mobile apps, WhatsApp groups, and so on and so forth, where you just share the link, and people can follow the link and respond to questionnaires. So it's also cost effective. And it allows quick analysis of data. However, it relies on internet. Where there is no internet access, for some respondents will be excluded. And it's also associated with low response rate because sometimes a number of times we link on WhatsApp group, but very few people follow the link. Please, is my slide moving?
No, sir, we are not seeing, sir.
You should have let me know that the slide is not moving. Something happened. I think that I received a call also, and thing. How about now?
Okay,
Yes,
is visible now, sir.
Okay, it's back, cool.
Yes, sir.
All right. So another way of classifying questionnaire is by question type. How the type of questions that are contained in the questionnaire. So here we have structured, unstructured, or semi-structured questionnaires. In a structured questionnaire, the questions are followed with predetermined responses. So you ask question and you give options for the respondent to select, either to select one out of the many options or to select as many options as applicable. So you can see example there. Example, you ask someone whether he smokes or not, and then you provide option, yes or no. So the advantage of this type of questionnaire is it is very easy to analyze. In fact, it's better. The advice is, as much as possible, try to make your questionnaire structured because it makes it easier for you to analyze. Unstructured questionnaire, on the other hand, it is framed with open-ended questions where you just ask question and you allow someone to respond. So the responses are not actually structured. You can see the same response or similar responses presented in about 5 different ways. So it poses difficulty during analysis. So this type of questionnaire is not, especially if you are doing a quantitative research, it is not advisable that you make questionnaire unstructured. However, the advantage is that it allows you to get more detailed information where necessary, because there are some responses that will require detail, where you ask someone to either specify or to clarify certain responses. So, but as much as possible, try and make your questionnaire structured, especially if it is a quantitative research. Semi-structured questionnaire combines the two. So it is essentially more of a structured questionnaire, but there are some questions that are left open for people to provide detail where necessary. So that is for questionnaire by type. There could also be questionnaire by content purpose, where you can have either factual questionnaires, attitudinal questionnaires, behavioral questionnaires, standardized questionnaires, and so on and so forth. So these ones are based on the content of the questionnaires. So, but the ones that are mainly encountered are the first two. Either you classify it by the method of administration or by the type of questions it contains. So let's move on, because the key thing is to know how to design the questionnaire. So what are the general considerations to be made before designing a questionnaire? So before designing a questionnaire, there are certain things that one need to consider. And among those things is that you have to decide the type of questionnaire that you want to design. Is it a self-administered questionnaire that you want to design, or an interviewer-administered questionnaire? Is it structured or unstructured? Because this will guide you on the type of how you are going to present the questions. Because self-administered questionnaire, you know that, okay, if it is self-administered questionnaire, you cannot put so many ambiguous questions like that, because if someone does not understand, you are not there to clarify. But for interviewer-administered questionnaires, sometimes some complex questions may be included, because you are the one that will administer it. You will be there to clarify. So these are some of the things. So you need to decide what type of questionnaire you want to design. Also, you need to determine the target group. Who are your target respondents? Are they literate? Are they laymen? Are they students? Because it determines how you are going to frame the questions. Ideally, all questions in questionnaire should be easy, straightforward, unambiguous, and so on and so forth. But still, knowing the target population will help you in deciding how the questions are going to be framed. Even the cultural sensitivity of questions is very important. So you also need to determine the resources that you have available. So if you don't have resources, then you need to make up your mind how the type of question. Is it paper-based questionnaire you want to design, or it is electronic questionnaire? Nowadays, most of the questionnaires are electronic. You just design it and deploy it. You can use your Android phone to collect it. So it saves money. Where you have sample size of up to 1,000 and you need to print 1,000 questionnaires, that will be about 5 reams of papers, and a ream now is a bit expensive. But all those can just be, you can collect everything using Android phone, so it saves you money. You also need to determine also even before you start designing the questionnaire, you need to have this at the back of your mind. How am I going to analyze my data? You should always think of analysis while designing questionnaire, because failure to do that might lead to another problem during analysis stage of the questionnaire. You might have data that will either not be analyzable or will be very difficult to analyze or some cannot be fully analyzed because some of the data, the information has been lost during the design of the questionnaire. So it's very important, each question that you include in your questionnaire, critique it. Can it be analyzed the way it is like this? The data I'm going to generate from this question, can it be analyzed? Is very, very important. So having made those general consideration, now let us look at the general format of a questionnaire, especially a structured questionnaire. How should a questionnaire be designed? What is the structure? What is the format? So usually the first thing is the affiliation of the questionnaire. So the researcher, is it institution-based? Is it for an organization? Is it a personal research? And so on and so forth. So this is very, very important. So it should be at the top. So if it's institution, the name of the institution should be there. If it is, for example, Usman Danfodio University Teaching Hospital, if it is the World Health Organization, sometimes some will just put their logo there. You just see logo. Even though nowadays, because most of the questionnaires are administered electronically, but it is still important because even the electronic questionnaire, when you open, you are supposed to see the affiliation, which institution is conducting the research or which organization, and so on and so forth. There, just below the affiliation, there must be a title. Every questionnaire must have a title. Questionnaire on blah, 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 blah. Don't just start questionnaire with questions. Age, sex, this, and that. No. Whoever is responding has right to know that this is a questionnaire and that the questionnaire is on so. So the topic should be there. So that is why the questionnaire must have a title. Then the next thing is the consent statement. Even though there is a separate consent form that one is expected to sign, but the questionnaire is also expected to carry the summary of the consent statement. Dear Sama, this is a research conducted by blah, 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 blah. The aim is this. Kindly respond to the questions as simple as just maybe a paragraph also, and then you seek the consent of the respondent to participate in the study. So after the consent statement, then the next is the questionnaire identifiers. That is the questionnaire number. This is very, very important. Please, whenever you are designing a questionnaire, always include questionnaire number. Just a space. If you have 100 questionnaires, then they should be numbered. Questionnaire 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, up to the 100. It's very important, especially during analysis. Because during analysis, that is when questionnaire number becomes more important, especially if you are doing data cleaning, because sometimes you pick a questionnaire, you see that during data cleaning, you see an ambiguous entry, and you want to correct that entry. The only way you can correct it is if you can trace the actual questionnaire that contains that information. So if there is no questionnaire number, you can't trace it. It's very difficult to trace it. But once there is questionnaire number, all you need to do is just check, oh, this is questionnaire number 7. Then you go to the questionnaire and check questionnaire number 7. What is maybe it's question 8 that has the problem. You go to question 8 and see the actual entry. So it's very, very important to include questionnaire number. Then interviewer ID also. If you are using research assistants, create a space for interviewer ID for interviewers because each interviewer should be identified. Because if you are dealing with a team, then the quality of the information of the data collected by each data collector should be tied, should be traceable to a particular data collector. So you can do that using the interviewer ID, because you can use it to know that this particular questionnaire was administered by so person. So if there is any problem related to that questionnaire, you know who to hold responsible. And then other things like date and so on and so forth, the town, the health facility, all those ones are under the questionnaire identifier. So it might not be applicable in some studies, but in some studies where they are applicable, please try as much as possible to include it. Then the next is the list of questions. Now, this list of questions are usually presented section by section. So section 1 usually is the biodata or the social demographic characteristic, as the case may be, so that the respondent, there are some basic information about the respondent that one needs to take. So usually is captured under either section 1 or section A. It depends on how you choose to. So you will have sections, section A, B, C, D, up to any number of sections. Usually each section is focusing on a particular specific objective. So now all the questions that will follow under that section should be questions that are answering that specific objective. We are going to see in the next, in the subsequent slide. And then the questionnaire should also have appreciation part, usually at the end. Thank you for your time. Thank you for participating in this study, and so on and so forth. Don't just end the questionnaire like that without appreciating the respondent. So this is just an example of all these things that we discussed. The format of a questionnaire are here. You can see the affiliation is there, the title is there, followed by the consent statement, and then the questionnaire identifier here is just the date and the questionnaire number. And then, of course, the list of questions. This one is just for page 1, and you can see it's only showing section E, but there are other sections. So this is how questionnaire should be structured, so that once you look at it, You can even know the specific objectives that the questionnaire is trying to answer. Please, is the slide moving?
Yes, it is, sir.
Okay, all right. So let's now look at the steps in designing questionnaire. The first is that you must outline your specific objectives. Without specific objective, you can't design any questionnaire. So that is the first thing. Of course, you have your question, your topic, but the first is the specific objective. So if you have 3 specific objectives, you must outline them. Objective 1, this. Objective 2, this. Objective 3, this. So you put it and you leave a space. The essence of that space is that those space will be filled by questions that are addressing that specific objectives. There are some objectives that you only need 1 question to answer them. Some objective cannot be answered by even 5 questions. Some even 10 questions will not be able to answer the objective. So, but at least you must have the objectives. Secondly, you now determine your literature sources. So this is why you now do literature search. Now for each objective, you consult literature widely to see where you can get questions that you now include under each objective, the questions that will answer the objectives. So you can do internet search for articles related to your own topic, because it's unlikely that you are the only one with that topic. The chances are that there are other topics, other researchers who have conducted similar research and have made some publications. So you can search articles, you can search for abstracts related to that specific objective, and then you read it to see some of the questions that were asked in those previous studies that are related to your objective. You can pick those questions and go and place them under that specific objective you are trying to answer. You can also search for standardized questionnaires. There are a lot of questionnaires that have been standardized, validated, and have been released free online for people who are conducting research to go and use them. So if you are lucky, there are questionnaires already that have been developed. All you need to do is go and get the questionnaire, either adopt or adapt. You adopt if the whole questionnaire, everything is okay. You don't want to change anything. So that means you are adopting the questionnaire. You are adapting the questionnaire if, yes, there are a lot of things that are okay, but you need to modify certain things because probably those things do not suit your own local reality. So you think there are some questions that you need to either remove or rephrase or modify, as the case may be. So that means you are adapting. You can also consult textbooks. Maybe you are doing a research on diabetes, and then you don't even know the question you should ask. Of course, when you go to textbooks, you will see all the things, you see the clinical features, you see the pathogenesis, blah, blah, blah. From there, you can know, okay, since my objective is to know what are the common problems that the patients or these respondents encounter. From the textbook, you will have seen what are the major problems associated with people with diabetes. So from there, you can now get some of the questions that you include in your questionnaire. So that is how textbook helps. You can look for projects, people who have, conducted either projects, dissertations, and so on and so forth. Or you can go to the library. If you are lucky, you will even see the questionnaire that they used, and then you pick the questions that are relevant to your own study. And you can consult experts also. After all this thing, you can meet experts. Sometimes say, please, I'm conducting so study. What should I ask? The expert can say, some, because they have conducted several researches in that field, they can just write the questions for you. For this objective, these are the things you should ask. For this one, these are the things you should ask. Go and look for so book. Everything is there. Oh, there is even a questionnaire, a standardized one. You can get it online. So some experts will make your work much easier. So especially supervisors or senior colleagues, you know, and then you can conduct interviews, focus group discussions, and so on. All these methods, there are ways you can source your own questions that you are going to include in your questionnaire. Once you do that, the remaining things is just going to be free flowing. So the next is now to structure your questions according to your specific objective. Now you have consulted widely, you have been able to get all the questions that you need. Now all you need to do is, for objective number 1, look for the questions that are answering it. You place them under the section that you put objective 1. Maybe if objective 1 is in section B, then all the questions answering that objective 1 will be put under section B. Section C, that is answering a different specific objective, you get all the questions answering that objective, you place them under section C, and so on and so forth. So that is how you now structure, because we say it's better to design a structured questionnaire. Then you outline the specific questions under each, so you provide options, because we say it's a structured questionnaire. So each question that is asked that you believe will answer a specific objective, provide option, so that the respondent will just select from the option that you are given. And then it's important to rearrange the question in logical order. You know, don't start with a follow-up question. Like, for example, let's say it's a question on awareness. Let's say is awareness on malaria. Have you ever heard of the disease called malaria fever? Yes, no. If yes, what are your sources of information? So this is a logical order. So don't go and start with, what are your sources of information on malaria? After giving, then the next question, have you ever heard of malaria? So it's not following a logical order. So that is what I mean by saying arrange it in a logical order. Apply skip logic where applicable. For example, nowadays we are using electronic, so it's the electronic platforms will allow you to apply skip logic. Skip logic is applicable to questions that are tied to a previous question. For example, have you ever experienced, if you are asking someone, maybe whether someone has ever experienced side effects to a particular drug? Yes, no. The next question, if yes, what were the side effects? So skip logic will only apply to those who selected yes in the first question. Those that said no will not even see this question that is saying, if yes, what were the side effects you experienced? So that is so always apply it, because it makes your data more reliable. Then there is need to pretest. So after everything, you need to what? Pretest the questionnaire. You have now gone through all the literature, you have been able to get your questions, and you have inserted the questions appropriately under the relevant sections. Then the next thing is what? To pretest it. So that pretesting will allow you to assess the clarity of the questionnaire. It will also give you idea of the time whether the questionnaire is too lengthy or not. Because when the questionnaire is too long, then it means a lot of people will have problem filling it. If it is self-administered, you are going to have a lot of non-responses because people will just fill first 2 pages and leave you with your thing. So during pre-test, it will allow you to know that, okay, the questionnaire is well understood, the time is okay. If there is any potential problem, you'll be able to detect it during pre-test. So after it, you now revisit the questionnaire. Based on the feedback you are able to get during pre-test, you revisit the questionnaire and then make other necessary corrections. So what are some do's and don'ts? Because there are some things that we need to always have at the back of our mind when we are designing a questionnaire. So they are important consideration. So they are the do's, things that we need to do, and the don'ts, things that we need to avoid while designing a questionnaire. It is very important for us to arrange the questions serially from question 1 to, if it is up to 40, from question 1 to the last number. Arrange them serially, cutting through sections. Don't start, you don't have to say, oh, now I've entered, maybe section 1 is only 8 questions. Section 2, instead of you to continue from question 9, you say, oh, you are starting from question 1 again. No. Number everything serially. If section A stops at 8, section B continue 9. Section C continue from where it stopped in section B, like that, and so on and so forth, because it's easier for you, it will make it easier for you to analyze your data. If you keep repeating, sometimes you will have problem during data analysis. So it's better you start with straightforward questions. Questions that are straightforward, start with them. The difficult questions or the challenging questions or the complex questions, you can now push them towards the end, so that even if, because there are some questions that are very sensitive, culturally sensitive, religiously sensitive. So those ones, you reserve them towards the end, so that whatever happened there, you just say, oh, I'm sorry, sir, and then the interview is already over. But if you start with them, then you might not be able to even complete the questionnaire administration. You should also ensure that all questions under each section clearly address a specific objective. So if you are on section, maybe section B is saying knowledge of something. So all the questions that should come under that section should be questions related to knowledge. Don't go and bring questions related to either attitude or questions related to practice or question related to clinical experience under section that is seeking information on knowledge. So that is the meaning of this statement. And then each question should be very clear and simple. There is no point framing question as if it is an exam, trying to catch some people. Well, some questionnaires, when you look at them, especially questionnaires that are seeking, that are assessing knowledge, you'll be scared. You think, is this a questionnaire? And if you distribute them to people, especially if it is self-administered, that is why you see people doing collaboration, community effort. This one is asking this one is, because the questions are even scary. So please, as much as possible, make it very clear and simple. It is not an exam. Avoid ambiguous questions. Ambiguous questions such as what? Do you go to toilet a lot? So what is a lot? It's ambiguous. So make it very clear and precise so that the person knows what you mean, so that the information you get is going to be the response to the actual question that you intend to ask. Avoid unnecessary terminologies also. Just use simple terminologies. For example, you ask Madam, do you have hyperemesis gravidarum? And also ask her, do you vomit excessively? At least she will know. If she vomits excessively, she will tell you, oh yes, I've been vomiting since yesterday. But when you bring terms, even if what you are looking for is there, you might miss it because the terminology you are using, the respondent is not clear with that terminology. Avoid undefined abbreviations or acronyms. As much as possible, write in full. You can now write the abbreviation in bracket, but don't just ask question and include abbreviation like that, because some respondents might not really know what the abbreviation mean, what the abbreviation is. And there are some abbreviations or acronyms that have different meanings depending on the context you are looking at it. So as much as possible, avoid using abbreviations that have not been defined in the questionnaire. So provide clear explanation at the beginning of each section. The questionnaire that is having section A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth. So provide explanation. Oh, this section, kindly cycle the correct answer. Kindly tick whatever it is. Write it very clear, so that the respondent knows what is expected of him. Oh, you can select more than one option. Or select only one. So all these are clear information that will help you generate valid data. Options to each question should be mutually exclusive. This is also very important. For example, if you are categorizing, let's say you are categorizing age, even though it's not advisable to categorize things like age and so on the questionnaire. So if you now put 10 to the maybe first category, 10 to 20 years. The next category, when you put 20 to 30 years. The next, 30 to 40. So now you see 20 is appearing in two different categories. You said 10 to 20. The second category, 20 to 30. So if someone is 20 years old now, which of the categories should be ticked or selected? So that is why we say it is better for it to be mutually exclusive, so that there is no way you can have a response that cut across many options, unless it is a question that has multiple options. And if that is the case, usually it is written in bracket. You can select more than one option. So it's very important to consider this. Avoid spelling mistakes, because there are some spelling mistakes that can mislead the respondent completely. For example, you want to write public health and then you are writing pubic health. So these are two different things. And so it can mislead the respondent. So if you are assessing his knowledge or awareness on public health, even though he's aware of it, he has heard of it, the fact that he's reading pubic health, he will select no. And that will have led to information bias. So questions or variables that are seeking a quantitative response should be left uncategorized. For example, age. Sometimes you see people making this mistake, a lot of times. If you are collecting information on age, please, on the questionnaire, just provide age, provide space. Whatever is the age, let the respondent just write it. If it is 20, write 20 years. If it is 30, write 30. Don't say age and then you group this to this years to this year for the person to select. Because the danger is during analysis, there are some things you may not be able to do. If even calculating mean age might be a problem for you until you follow some other means. If not, you will not be able to calculate the mean age. And you will not be able to recategorize it in a different way. Maybe you categorize your age less than 20 years, 20 to 30, and so on and so forth. And now during analysis, you realize, oh, you also want to recategorize it, maybe less than 50 years and then, or less than 60 years and so on, you will not be able to recategorize because your data is already collected as categorized data. But once you collect it as raw age, you can recategorize it any number of times you want. It's more flexible. So please, things like age, BMI, blood pressure, and so on and so forth, just collect them and the way they are and record it. During analysis, you can group it the way you want to group it. Do not join two or more sentences in one. You know, this is also very important. When you join two sentences in one, then what will be the if so, for example, you ask someone, are you coming today or until tomorrow? And the person say yes. So that yes, is he coming today or is coming tomorrow? So that is because you have joined two questions in two sentences in one question. So the ideal thing will be, are you coming today? Are you coming tomorrow? Or when are you coming? Option today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and so on and so forth. So this one is just example. There are a number of instances like that where you join two questions that have different answers. So please try as much as possible to avoid that when designing a questionnaire. Avoid leading question. Leading question are questions that suggest the answer to the respondent. Maybe you are doing a study on food poisoning and you ask the person, do you think this food you ate caused your vomiting or whatever? You are already suggesting the answer to him. So as much as possible, avoid leading question. Just ask the question, without suggesting any answer to the respondent. So now we have discussed all the steps, the nitty-gritty of designing a questionnaire. I don't know, please, is there any question before we move on?
Yes, sir. There are a few questions in the chat box. I don't know, sir. I don't know. Will you prefer if at the end of the presentation, then you attend to all of them simultaneously, sir? Or
all right.
Maybe we can read them out now.
It's okay. It's okay. Maybe we can take to save time. Maybe we can take them later. Cool?
All right, sir. Okay, sir.
So after designing questionnaire is not the end of the business. We need to validate the questionnaire. Why do we need to validate the questionnaire? Because we want to ensure that the questionnaire is able to measure what we intend to measure with it. Because if the questionnaire is not able to measure what we intend to measure, then that questionnaire is going to give misleading information or an unreliable data. So it will lead to a lot of things, either bias, result, inconsistencies, and so on and so forth. Sometimes, even if there is actual change in what we are looking for, the questionnaire might not be able to detect it. So validation is very, very important. So what are the types? We just briefly look at the various types of validation. So in validating questionnaire, there is what we mainly look at, the validity of the questionnaire. That is whether the questionnaire is able to measure what it should measure, and also reliability of the questionnaire. How consistent is the questionnaire able to bring or generate consistent data, even if you are to administer it over time? So these are very, very important things. So we are going to look at validity and reliability test questionnaire. So the first is the face validity. This is the simplest form of assessing validity of questionnaire. It's just the extent to which the questionnaire appears to be able to measure what is expected to measure. And this one is usually done by experts. For example, you can just give your supervisor, so this is the questionnaire, do you think it's okay? The supervisor will look at it, okay, yes, this, whatever. Yeah, I think it's okay. So that is first validity. The supervisor or the expert will just look at the questions, the way they ask, the way the questions are framed, and say, oh, I think these questions are okay. So that is first validity, because it appears okay to him. So the major limitation here is that is subjected to biased assessment, because the assessment is not going to be objective. So let me not say it's not going to be objective, may not always be objective. So sometimes there will be some subjectivity depending on how the expert looks at it. So it's not a very reliable way of assessing validity, but it is still usually is the first step. There is also content validity, which is the extent to which a questionnaire covers all the important aspects that it should cover as far as that construct is concerned. If you are assessing knowledge, attitude, and practice, so to what extent does the questionnaire address all the questions that will answer the objective on knowledge? The questions that are under attitude, are they adequate enough to be able to assess the attitude? The questions that are captured under practice, are they adequate enough to be able to assess the practice, either in terms of whether it is being practiced or it is being practiced well? So that is the main focus of content validity, and usually is also experts that are used. So here you give the questionnaire to different experts, and each question is rated, each question that is included. So for example, let's say the first objective is on knowledge. There are 5 questions there, for example. So you can print 7 questionnaires, 10 questionnaires, and give it to 7 to 10 different experts. Each expert, so each question in that questionnaire has rating. Is usually rated on a scale of 1 to 4. So the experts will rate each question as either not relevant or somewhat relevant, quite relevant, or highly relevant. So each question, the rating is going to be done. So the expert will just tick by the side of that question, oh, this one is highly relevant, oh, this one is not relevant, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, there is a short analysis that is done. And so that is the content validity index. So this content validity index is of 2 types. There is the item content validity index. That means item by item. So the proportion of experts that rate each item as relevant. If 7 experts assess a particular question, maybe question 1, all the 7 experts individually, they said, this one is relevant, this one is relevant. That means it is having a high, it is going to have a high item content validity index at the end of the day. And then there is the scale content validity index also, which takes the average of each of the rates or each of the item content validity index. If there are 5 questions, for example, under a specific objective, each of those questions is going to be rated by an expert. So that means each of those questions will have an item content validity index. And it is a number, it is a value. Usually any value that is up to 0.78, it is believed to have a good or acceptable item content validity index. That means you can leave that question. That question is okay. So if all the questions that are included have item content validity index of up to 0.78, that means all the questions are okay. There is no need to modify or remove. So that is just the essence of the content validity index. So each expert will rate it. This one, there are some questions that once you take your questionnaire to your supervisor, as soon as he looks at it, you just strike it out. Kai, this one, remove it. It's not relevant. This one, why are you putting it? Is it related to your objective? No, cancel it. Well, this one, but where you are putting it is not clear. Why not modify it? So that means he's now trying to, maybe by his assessment, it is somewhat relevant, but the way you are capturing it is not very okay, so he can tell you to modify it. So content validity index, in fact, is the one that is mostly done. In practical terms, is easier to use. So at least, even if you not do anything, do the content validity index because it's simple, it's user-friendly. So this is just an example, a questionnaire on maternal health service utilization reviewed by 7 experts. So the first item there is a question: how many antenatal visits did you attend? Is rated by 7 experts, and all of them rated it as relevant. It will now, by the time you compute the content validity index, you see that it will have a validity index of 1, which is the highest you can get. For the next question, do you use herbal medicine? Only 5 rated it as relevant, and look at the content validity index is 0.71. So that means this one is below the 0.78 marks. So it means it needs to be either modified or removed, because the way it is showing that as if the question is not very relevant. So by the time you do that, you see that all the questions you have under each specific objective in your questionnaire are questions that will answer your objective. By the time you do this, you can be rest assured that, yes, your questionnaire is going to be able to answer your objective. Construct validity is also another way of assessing validity of a questionnaire. It's not a very user-friendly, or let's say as user-friendly as the content validity index. So it's just the degree to which the questionnaire actually measures the theoretical concept that it claims to measure. And there are different ways of doing that. The commonest way is factor analysis. You do that. There are software that can do that, but mainly the ones that, even if you did not do the actual factor analysis, do the convergent and discriminant validity. So the convergent validity is when you look at questions that are related or that are answering the same constructs. It is expected that those questions have high correlation because they are measuring the same thing. So if the convergent validity is high, it means all the questions that are under that specific objective are asking about the same thing. But by the time you pick 2 questions, for example, under the same specific objective, and you see that they have low correlation, it means you have included questions that are not actually answering the same objective. some are supposed to be there, while some are actually maybe supposed to be in another question. This is very common, especially people that assess perception and attitude. People use them interchangeably. Perception is different from attitude. But sometimes you see attitude questions brought under perception questions brought under attitude. So when you encounter things like this, it may likely lead to this type of problem. So by the time you do the convergent validity, you see that there is low correlation between some of the questions that are included under the same specific objective. The discriminant validity, on the other hand, is looking at questions that are answering or that are measuring different constructs. For example, question that is supposed to be answering a specific objective on knowledge, then question that is answering specific objective on maybe attitude. By the time you correlate, you run correlation between the two questions, it is expected that this question, the correlation is supposed to be very low. That means it is telling you that no, they are actually measuring different things. So by the time you pick a question from one under a particular objective, and you pick another question from a different section because it's answering a different objective, you run correlation and you see that the correlation is a bit high, then it's telling you that there is problem. Because questions that are captured under different sections should have low correlation by the time you run. So that is the importance of this discriminant validity. While questions that are answering the same construct, that means questions that are captured under the same section should have what? High correlation, because they are measuring the same thing. So if you see that they are in the same section, but they have low correlation, that means there is problem. It is telling you that the questions are not exactly measuring the same thing. So maybe you may need to, redefine it or modify the question. Then there is criterion validity. This one is not always applicable in all situations. And so is the extent to which the questionnaire results agree with a gold standard where it is available. So to what extent does it agree? So there is concurrent validity and there is predictive. For example, you conduct a study to assess people's maybe on obesity, and you ask people to, if they know, they should just document their weight. What is your current weight today? And you collect the information. And now you now compare it with actual, after everything, you now bring a weighing scale and say, okay, come, let us measure it. So the weighing scale is the actual one now because this is an objective measurement. That one is subjective. So that is now you comparing what is on the questionnaire with a gold standard. So that is criterion validity. You just, when you can also, that can also be done when you also, like, for example, you compare with a cutoff value to see whether it is either below or above a certain cutoff value that has already been fixed for that item you are measuring. So, but the most important ones, at least that content validity is very important. You can do that. You can give your supervisors, the consultants within the same department, just give them the questionnaire with the rating, let them do the rating, and just come back and you compute your thing. Within few minutes, you know whether the content is okay or it's not okay. If you want to go ahead to do the construct validity testing, you can It's not always applicable in all studies. So let it be very clear. It's not all questionnaires that will require this test. So it depends on what the questionnaire is actually trying to address. So, and then there is reliability testing. So the first one we discussed is just the validity testing. That means ability of the questionnaire to measure what the researcher intends to measure with the questionnaire. Reliability testing now is subject matter of how consistent the questionnaire is. You know, if you use the same questionnaire on 100 people, are you likely to generate the same or similar information? Or if you use the same questionnaire on the same person over different time, are you likely going to be able to generate the same information from that same person or not? So that is the how that tells you how reliable the questionnaire is. So there are different ways of also assessing the reliability of the questionnaire. We'll just look at it briefly. The first one is the test-retest reliability, which measures the stability of the questionnaire over a period of time. So this one is simply done by administering the same questionnaire twice on the same group of people, maybe separated by duration of either 1 week or 2 weeks, as the case may be. So you meet 10 people, 20 people, you give them the questionnaire today, you collect their response, you keep. After 1 week, after 2 weeks, go back to the same people, give them the same questionnaire, and you collect the response. Under normal circumstances, if the questionnaire is stable, the responses are supposed to be the same. The responses are supposed to be the same. Even if they are not the same, the difference should not be that much. So by the time you do that, you can run correlation. And that correlation will tell you how stable the questionnaire is. So if the questionnaire is stable, the correlation coefficient should be at least up to 0.7. So if it's up to 0.7, yes, you can say that yes, the questionnaire is stable, even though there are some differences in the responses, but it shows you that at least about 70% of the responses are the same. So that is the test-retest reliability. This one can easily be done. Internal consistency is another way of assessing reliability, and this measures whether items that are supposed to measure the same construct actually correlate. So this is somewhat similar to the construct validity. So this one is not applicable in all studies, also in all questionnaires. So there are questionnaires that are more suitable for this, especially if you are looking at, if you are assessing people's attitude or perception. Yes, then it's very important to, and so it means all the questions that are grouped under that section that is asking, that is assessing perception, the questions should correlate with each other. If they do not correlate with each other, it tells you that some of those questions are not actually measuring that they are not going to, it means the questionnaire is not going to give you what consistent result. By the time you administer it to different set of people, you will see that the responses will keep changing. And it is, the change is not because of the change in the way the respondents perceive it. No, it is because the questions are not very clear. You can read it today, it will give you one meaning. Someone else will come and read the same question and he will understand it differently. So when you include questions that are not very clear or a bit ambiguous, it can lead to lack of internal consistency. That means the questions are not moving in the same direction. Even though they are supposed to move in the same direction, since they are supposed to measure the same construct. They are answering the same specific objectives. So this one also is assessed by looking at the Cronbach alpha coefficient. Can do it using software. So all the questions you run correlation for them, and if they highly correlate with each other, the correlation, the Cronbach alpha coefficient is going to be high. Usually, once it is up to 0.7, it's generally believed to be acceptable. That means the questionnaire is acceptable. It is going to be able to answer that construct or that objective that you are trying to answer. But if it is less than 0.7, it tells you that if you go ahead to use that questionnaire, that objective will not be answered correctly. So that is the importance of this. Then there is also inter-rater reliability, which is used generally in interviewer-administered questionnaire. It also tells you how consistent a questionnaire is. If a questionnaire has questions that are not very clear, then you give it to two data collectors. The data collectors will go and ask the questions in different ways, even though is the same question, but because the way the questions are framed is not very clear. So data collector A will ask it in a different way from the way data collector B will ask his own question. And once the questions are asked in different ways, the responses are not going to be similar. And that will bias the response. So this is also very important. So if you are going to use an interviewer-administered questionnaire, you can do inter-rater reliability test. So you give it to two different raters, let them respond, and then you run the test. There is kappa coefficient, usually that is the one that is used. So once it is up to 0.75, it tells you that, no, there is excellent agreement that the questionnaire can actually be used. The questions are stable enough. The questions are not likely to be asked in different ways. So that is the importance of the inter-rater reliability test. So finally, after this whole thing, you have done all the validity tests, you have done the reliability test. The next thing now, you have to still come back and review the questionnaire. The questions may be based on the content validity. Where the questions are not enough, you add. Questions that have a low content validity index, you modify them so that they are now clear. Questions that are having low internal consistency, you modify the question. So once you do that, that is the final review of the questionnaire. The next thing is just to go to the field and still pre-test to see whether you are going to get whether the respondents, those problems that you detected initially at the beginning of the initial pretest, whether they have been resolved or not. So in conclusion, we should know that a good questionnaire should be clear, concise, and it should be validated. No matter what, we should do at least face and content validity, because that one is straightforward. We can do it with our supervisors and co. And depending on the type of questionnaire we are using or the specific objectives we are trying to answer, we may need to do the internal consistency. It doesn't apply to all questionnaires, but there are certain questionnaires or objectives that will warrant carrying out internal consistency test or the test retest or inter-rater reliability test, as the case may be. So validation is very important because it ensures that we have data that is accurate, data that is reliable. And if data is reliable and accurate, it will allow us to make a valid generalization or conclusion. So with this, I think, say if we look at some of the questions and comments that people have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that insightful lecture. It was clear, engaging, and very informative. I really learned a lot. So there are a couple of questions in the chat box. I don't know, should I go ahead and read them out?
Yes, please, you can go ahead. I'm also trying to
Okay,
open
sir.
the,
Okay, sir. So the first question is from Oyewande Azizat. She said, "Thank you, sir, for the presentation. Is it a must to put the name of the interviewer in the online questionnaire if it's an individual, or only the affiliation should be written? Thank you, sir."
the name of the researcher. Yes,
The name of the interviewer.
Yeah, that is the researcher per se. The name of the interviewer is relevant to the person that has the research. So that, but if you are sending online questionnaires, it's self-administered. So there is no interviewer there. So there will be no need for name of interviewer. Name of interviewer is if it is interviewer administered, so that you'll be able to see who administered a particular questionnaire in case there are problems with the data that are sought from that questionnaire. So it's not relevant if it is an online questionnaire, but it is important to put the name of the researcher because it is a consent issue. It is required that you can't be doing research as anonymous person. So if someone has problem with some of the questions or some of the research, the person should know who to contact.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir. Dr. Azizat, I hope that answers your question. The next question is from Henry, and he wants to know if there is any difference between a questionnaire and a pro forma.
Yes, there is difference. A questionnaire, just like the name applies, it's a document that has list of questions that help the researcher to address his specific objectives.
Okay.
Yes, so this questionnaire is mainly is not always, I'm not saying it's always like that, but it's mainly used by social science researchers, like either public health, those in sociology, and so on and so forth, because there are some research questions that cannot be answered by questionnaire. Some are clinical parameters that the researcher is interested in actually answering. So that is where a pro forma comes in, because a pro forma is not the way the questions are presented, they are not actually presented in form of question. Whereas a questionnaire, the variables are presented in form of question. I don't know if you get the, so most pro forma is like variable, like for on clinical parameter of a patient. Maybe someone, either a surgeon or someone in internal medicine, wants to do a research that involves extraction of the information from the case note. So you see, when asking anybody any question, but there are some information that you want to extract from the file. The data is already there, predetermined. All you need to do is outline the fields that are relevant to your study, and you now get the information. So that is the major difference. Questionnaire is usually questions that are asked and someone responds to it. Whereas a pro forma is not like it does not contain questions that are administered to anybody. You understand? But they are just fields that are collecting relevant information that the researcher is interested in. So it can be information that are sought from case note, either the patient's folder or the admission register, and so on and so forth. So that is the major difference. So a pro forma is different from a questionnaire.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Dr. Henry, I hope that makes it clearer. The next question is from Abdulaziz Balarabi, and he asked, can someone develop questionnaire with the use of AI? And what is the most common type of questionnaire used in our clinics, especially MOPD and GOPC?
Yes, AI can, with AI now, in fact, all those things that we mentioned is if you want to do it yourself. But AI, you can give AI instruction. Kindly, I need a questionnaire on blah, 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 blah. You give it the title. AI will do it. If you want it to have 3 sections, the questionnaire should have 3 sections, section A on this, section B on this section. It will design it like that. So if it is a structured questionnaire you want, AI can do it for you. If it is an unstructured questionnaire that you want, AI can also do it for you. But at the end of the day, you may still need to modify certain things because the result you are going to get is based on the information you give to it, because it is computer. So it is going to use your request to, and you know, the way AI works, it depends on how you interact with it. Someone can use the same AI to get more detailed information than you, even though you ask the same question. So it can actually be used. Yes,
Okay,
and then
sir.
the one asking about the commonest type, I think I don't think I can answer that question to say this is the commonest type of questionnaire used in MOPD also, because there are different types of studies that are conducted in MOPD or GOPD, and each type of those studies will determine the type of questionnaire that one wants to use, whether it is self-administered, whether it is interviewer-administered, and so on and so forth. Here in our area, you know, a lot of questionnaires are still administered by the interviewer. Why? Because a huge proportion of the respondents are not literate enough to be able to read, understand, and respond to the questionnaires. So I don't know the context in which is trying to ask the question, whether type as per self-administered or not, type as per structured or unstructured. It's not very clear.
Okay, thank you very much for the response, sir. The next is from Omonye Vivian, and she is asking that, must you pretest every questionnaire? And the second question is, if I want to adapt a questionnaire, must I validate the adapted questionnaire?
Yes, pre-testing is very, very important. But even if it's a validated questionnaire, the questionnaire was probably validated elsewhere. If you adopt a questionnaire, because WHO has a lot of questionnaires that have been standardized, validated, and so on and so forth. But that doesn't mean the questionnaire should still not be pre-tested, because the validation and so on and so forth will have been done in a different place among people that have that are of different socioeconomic background. So if you just adopt it the way it is, there are some questions that are not culturally, that might not be so culturally sensitive, or and so on. So if you ask them the way they are without modifying, it could cause problem for you. There are some things that are not even applicable. Some questionnaires, even the questions maybe you are assessing income, probably the questions are asked in dollars. And here, we don't do that. Maybe distance. The questions are asked in miles. Here, we don't use mile. It's kilometer that we use. Sometimes questions are asked in kilometers, but you know that if you ask the respondent how many kilometers, it will be very difficult for the respondent. You might need to modify it to, okay, how many minutes or hours of trekking will it take you from your house to so place? So these are the reasons why you need to pre-test to see whether the questionnaire, the way it is whether it will be understood by your respondents or not. And there are some other challenges, technical challenges in terms of the methodology and so on, that you might not be able to detect unless you do the pre-test. So when you pre-test, you will see how practically possible is it for you to be able to even implement your own methodology, because questionnaire is one thing, the methodology you want to follow in administering the questionnaire is another thing. There are some questionnaires that are designed to be self-administered, but here in our own context, those questionnaires will have to be administered by an interviewer. So that is why pre-testing is very, very important. And validation also, some questionnaires, you don't need to validate them because they have already been validated. So, but you have to state that they are validated questionnaire, but you must pre-test. You must be able to pre-test the questionnaire.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for that beautiful response. I hope that is clearer now. The next is from Azizat, and she says, kindly differentiate between pre-test and pilot study. Well, the second question from same person is, will the pre-test or pilot study done among similar populations in another department in the same hospital, or in a similar population in another hospital in another local government?
Okay. So this is a good question because people interchange the two. Pre-test is when you test a component of your research, just a component, maybe questionnaire. You just decide, okay, you want to test the questionnaire to see whether the questions are okay, how long will it take, whether the research assistants you hired, whether they can do the work, and so that you just want to know whether the questionnaire is okay. Whereas pilot study is conducting the whole research on a small scale, meaning that you design the questionnaire, you administer it, you collect the data, you analyze the data, you write, even you bring out the data in form of tables and so on and so forth. So that is pilot study. In fact, you even go ahead to answer all the objectives. If there are 3 objectives, you bring out the result for the 3 objectives. That is pilot study. when you conduct the whole research from the beginning to the end on a small number of people that are not the actual people you are going to study. Whereas pre-test, you are only testing a component of the research. So all you are interested, for example, is whether the questionnaire is okay. You go to the field, you administer, people are responding well to it, and then you collect your questionnaire and keep. Or no, question 3 is all of them. I realize they have always been asking for clarification. That question 3, I think, is not clear. Let's correct it. That is pre-test. But pilot study, you do everything. Collect the data, input the data in your questionnaire, in your computer, do the data analysis, answer all the objectives. So as much as possible, if you can do, it's better you do the pilot study. So it's more comprehensive. It will allow you to test everything, including your computer, whether your computer can even analyze it or not, whether the software you propose to use for analysis can even analyze the data or not. Because sometimes there are situations whereby you see people collecting data that cannot be analyzed. You see data is collected, but the way it was collected, nobody can analyze it. But they didn't know, because when they did pre-test, they only administered the questionnaire and left it like that. Nobody bothered to go ahead to analyze the data to see whether it can be analyzed. So that is the essence of the pilot study. And usually, whether pilot study or pre-test, it is not done within the population that is to be studied. It is done on a similar population with a similar characteristics, but different population. Maybe if it is to be administered, the study is to be done in a teaching hospital, you can go to the state specialist hospital, for example, and do the pilot study there. Because the essence is that there shouldn't be contamination so that the people you want to study should not have idea that so study is even taking place.
Okay, thank you for the response, sir. The next person is saying, thank you once again. Questionnaires designation in the proposal must follow all these steps. I think maybe he wants to say must questionnaire designation in the proposal, must it follow all these steps? Thank you, sir.
Yes, like I said, it depends on your objectives. There are some questionnaires that will not need to follow all these steps. There are some objectives that once you there are standardized questionnaires. So all you need to do is get the questionnaire, reference it, go and do your pre-test, because all that you want to do has already been done. So you don't need to go through all those things if you are adopting a questionnaire. But if you are developing a questionnaire from the scratch, the questionnaire is not available. No one has ever done it. Now, because you want to do the research, you now are saddled with the burden of developing the questionnaire. So when you do that, yes, it is expected that you validate the questionnaire, because you want to have a data that is reliable. Because unless you do that, you might run into trouble of, administering 500 questionnaires to people in spending huge amount of money just for you during analysis, you realize, oh, the data is not valid because the information, the responses are clashing with each other because it has not been validated. So that is why, well, if it has been validated, you have standardized tool, there is no need to go through all those processes, but at least pre-test it to be sure that the people you want to use the questionnaire on can understand it, and that you yourself can also, and the research assistant can actually administer it.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. The next is from Suleiman Hassan. He says, thank you for the helpful presentation. He has two questions. Question 1, what proportion of the sample size will be used for the validation pilot study? While the second question says, will the pilot study be conducted in the same population as the study population? Thank you. Yes, that has been answered.
So I started with the question 2. I think I just addressed the question 2.
Yes, sir. It has been addressed.
Yes, exactly. That is so. But the question 1 usually is 10% of the sample size you are proposing to use. So if your sample size is 200, your calculated sample size, so your pilot study or pretest just gets about 20. So administer it on 20. That will suffice. So it's 10% of your sample size.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. The next is from Halima Sani, and she wants to know what is the role of pilot test in questionnaire validation, and which validity does it measure?
So, like I said, pilot study is conducting the whole study. So it's very, very important. It will allow you to pretest the questionnaire, to pretest yourself to know whether the participants will understand it or not, and so on and so forth. And then you can use it to testing validity. It depends, because pilot study is not just for testing validity. Testing validity, we have mentioned the criteria that are followed. Either you just give it, because when you give it to your supervisor or experts to look at it, they can give you the first validity. They can do the content validity index for you. And that is not pilot study, because you do not even administer it to anybody in the first place. So pilot study is different from validation of questionnaire. It's mainly to allow you to test all the components of your research, the questionnaire itself, your research assistants, whether they are capable of doing it, your methodology. The methodology, is it a workable methodology? Your computer, the software you say you want to use for analysis, can it actually analyze it? The objective, is it smart enough? If your objective is not smart, by the time you come to do your analysis and so on, you see that the objective might not be really answered also. So that is the essence of the pilot study. It will allow you to test all these things. And that's why I say, as much as possible, if you can go for the pilot study, because it will allow you to test so many things so that you won't have huge amount of data that cannot be analyzed, because it has not been pre-tested to the level of analysis. And so that is so. When you do pilot survey, you are testing all the components. Issue of validation of questionnaire, it doesn't have to be through pilot survey. You can give it to your expert to look at the content. You can do the content validity index. You can look at the construct validity, and then the reliability. The reliability now, you can use your results during pilot study. So pilot study will allow you to assess reliability of your instrument. Either the internal consistency, it can allow you to do that. The inter-rater, because now different people are administering it, you can do that. So mainly is the reliability that pilot study will allow you to test reliability of the instrument. That is how consistent the instrument is.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. The next person says, thank you very much for the lecture, sir. Please, I need more clarification on item and scale content validity index.
Okay, so like I said, item content validity index. Let's say you have section 1 is answering a particular objective. Let's say knowledge of something, and you feel there are 4 knowledge questions that will answer that objective. You believe these 4 questions will be able to answer that objective on knowledge. So you put the 4 questions. beside the 4 questions, you are going to put a scale, a rating scale of 1 to 4. Now, these questions, you print about 7 or 10, depending on the number of experts you have. So if you have up to 10 consultants, print 10 questions, 10 copies of the questionnaire, and give it to these 10 consultants. That each of them, what you want is each of them to look at each of the 4 questions under knowledge and rate it, whether it is relevant or not relevant, on a scale of 1 to 4. Now, question 1, for example, if there are 10 consultants, that means each of those 10 consultants will have his own rating as far as question 1 is concerned. Someone will give it 4, another will give it 2, another will give it 1, as the case may be. You understand? So now when you match all the questions, all the responses, you are now going to now be able to compute the item content validity index. By the time consultant 1 gives it 4, consultant 2 gives it 3, and so on and so forth. When you match everything for that question 1 alone, you are going to be able to come up with a value between 0 to 1. Now that value is the item content validity index for that question 1. And it is one that we say once it is up to 0.78, it means the question is relevant. So that means it should be left like that, or it should remain in the questionnaire. You move to question 2 and see, okay, how did the consultants rate the second question? By the time you combine all their responses and compute it, you are also going to be able to come up with a value. That value, if it is less than 0.78, then you say, this one has a low item content validity index. So maybe this question should be modified. So that is the item content validity index. Then the scale. Now, the scale content validity index is assessed using all the 4 questions. Because we are using 4 now just for the purpose of example, that okay, we have an objective, and that objective is to be answered by 4 questions. So for the item is question by question, each of the 4 questions. Now for the scale content validity index, it is the average of the scores of each question. If question 1 has, for example, a score of 0.8, question 2 has a score of 0.65, question 3 has a score of 0.9, question 4 has a score of 0.96. These 4 scores now get the average. So that will give you the scale content validity index. That tells you that, okay, as a whole, as a scale, that those 4 questions can actually address the objective. So that is the essence of the scale content validity index. For the item, is only talking about respective question. So if it is low for a question, you either remove the question or you modify the question and give it to the consultants again to rate, and see whether now all of them will rate it as a relevant question or not relevant question. So I don't know whether it's clear now.
I hope it's clear too, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And this
Yes.
person is asking that, must the expert be 6 during content validity index? Can 2 experts carry it out?
No, it's preferable to have an odd number of experts. It's preferred to have odd number of experts. So generally, it is believed it should be at least 5 to 7. 5 to 7. If you want to do it, yes, the recommendation is at least 5 to 7 experts should do it. Yes.
Okay, sir. And this one is from Sakinat. She says, thank you so much for the presentation. For KAP studies, do we include respondents who are not aware of the topic asked?
Well, it depends. If awareness is part of the objectives, yes, you still include, because I think you are asking studies related to maybe knowledge of something, and you ask someone, are you aware? And he says no. So generally, if someone is not aware, you may not need to, under normal circumstances, you don't go further to ask him about the questions answering knowledge. You ask someone, have you ever heard of COVID-19? He said no. And then you are now asking him what is the causative agent of COVID-19 and co. So it seems somehow, because someone has already said he has never heard of it, unless you want him to guess. You understand? But there are sometimes instances whereby even if someone is not aware, you may still go ahead to assess knowledge of to assess the knowledge in those persons. But it depends on the topic. So it's not a hard and fast rule that once awareness is not there, you cannot assess knowledge. But generally, once there is no awareness, questions on knowledge, you skip them. So if it is skip logic, you apply skip logic. But there are a few instances whereby sometimes you may need to still ask the questions regarding knowledge.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for the response. Others are saying, excellent presentation, God bless you. But this person says, please, do we need ethical clearance for conducting a pilot study in another hospital?
Well, generally, once you are going to collect information, you contact, then you need ethical clearance. You need ethical clearance, but sometimes that is why it is better, usually before you move to the stage of what is it called, pilot study, it is expected that you have received ethical clearance of the study, because without that, you will not even proceed for to do the pilot study. So you have to collect ethical clearance or permission. If you already have ethical clearance, you might apply for permission and attach the ethical clearance. For example, let's say you want to conduct a study in one of the general hospitals in a state, and you apply to the Ministry of Health for ethical clearance, and the Ministry of Health decides, yes, permission granted. And now you say, okay, the pilot study, you want to do it in the state specialist hospital. Most state specialist hospitals also have their own ethics review committee. Most of them, they have it. So in that case, you may not have to apply for the ethical. You can, since all of them, even the state specialists, all of them are under Ministry of Health, you can apply for the ethical clearance and then attach this ethical clearance given to you by the state. So that makes it, that shortens it. In fact, even if it is the teaching hospital, for example, that you want to do, if the state has given you, if you attach the ethical clearance given to you by the state, it makes it easier. Usually it shortens the duration of time. But yes, whether it is pilot study, because pilot study is the whole study, just on a small number of people. So you need ethical clearance. Even pre-test, we don't go for pre-test usually until ethical clearance is sought before you go for the pre-test.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And the last question here says, thanks so much, sir. In the example you gave about item content validity index, you said the consultant will score each question between 1 and 4. Is it because there are 4 questions in total? Assuming there are 6 questions, must the consultant score each question up to 6?
The score of 1 to 4 is rating. It's a Likert scale. We call it is a Likert scale. So even if there are 100 questions, each question will be rated on a scale of 1 to 4. Usually 1 is not relevant. That it is telling you that this question, all you are saying is, let's say for an objective, you have 10 questions under that objective that you believe will be able to answer the objective. All you are telling the supervisor or the consultant is, please, sir, look at these questions. Rate their relevance for me on a scale of 1 to 4. Question 1, is it relevant? This consultant will look at it. No, this one is not relevant to give it 1. 1 means it is not relevant. 2 means it is somewhat not relevant. 3 means it is somewhat relevant. And 4 means, yes, it is relevant. So even if there are 100 questions, it is still rated on a scale of 1 to 4. Usually a scale of 1 to 4. So by the time you add up all the scores for all the from all the consultants, you'll be able to come up with the item content validity index.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for the response. And then this person is asking, do you need a different clearance for pre-testing if you are doing it in a facility different from the study site? I think that has, okay.
Yes, once it is in a different place, your ethical clearance will, for example, if the teaching hospital gives you ethical clearance and now you want to go to the state specialist hospital, that is a different institution. They have their own. So that is what I'm saying. You need to also apply. But however, to make it faster, you can attach the ethical clearance given to you by the teaching hospital. So it will not go through all the processes, because by the time they see the ethical clearance, they will know that, oh, your protocol, your proposal will have been scrutinized already. The questionnaire will have been scrutinized. So let's just grant him, since it has already been evaluated. So if it's in a different place, yes, you need to do that. But to make it easier for you, just attach the ethical clearance that you were given by the other ethics committee so as to make it faster.
Okay, thank you very much. And so that brings it to the end of the questions on the chat box.
Okay.
Well, it is on this note that we still want to thank you very much, sir, for your time and for the insightful lecture. It was really interesting and very clear. We want to thank you very much for your time, sir. And this brings it to the end of the lectures for this week. We look forward to seeing you for another presentation next week. Thank you all.
Okay, so welcome and thank you for participating. I didn't know the number is this large. It is just now that I'm looking.
Okay. It was up to around 60 something or there about at a point.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well,
Yes,
it's
sir.
a good thing actually that you people have come up with. Well done.
Thank you very much, sir.
All
The
right.
presenters, thank you, everybody. Do have a lovely day ahead.